Hello friends and welcome to another TNT. It's Thursday and we've got some big news for you today. Now imagine you are a YouTuber, you run a Forex trading scam, that's a foreign exchange trading scam. Your name is Nutty, you're very popular and you get away with 55 million US from investors. Now this Nutty is apparently, she's fled to Malaysia, people aren't quite sure, but that's a story that we're going to be talking about today. Where has Nutty gone? I'm also very proud to announce that we've got our very first sponsor on the program, probably an old friend to some of you. I'd like to welcome 5 Star Marine, and you can find their details at 5starmarinephuket.com. Very proud to have them as a sponsor, and we look forward to showing you pretty pictures of islands and the places that you can go in the future here on the program. Let's get started. And great to have you with us on this Thursday morning as we whip around both the region and Thailand, have a bit of a peer behind some of the main news stories. Thank you very much for dropping in. I really appreciate your support. And if you haven't so far, maybe you could subscribe. That will really help us with our YouTube algorithms and stuff. This is TNT. Our first story, as we said, this popular YouTuber fleeing Thailand after allegedly scamming over 6,000 victims out of 55 million. Now, she's not an unattractive young lady. Her name is Nutty, and it looks like she's been a very bad girl. A popular Thai YouTuber who claimed to be a successful Forex trader has reportedly left the country after it was discovered that she allegedly defrauded over 6,000 victims out of 2 billion baht, that's around about 55 million US dollars. Now, at the moment, police think that that 55 million is at the low end of the total scam and that there's a lot more than the 6,000 victims. Her name is Natamon, and she's known as Nutty's Diary on YouTube. Now, don't leave right now. Don't go straight to her channel and go and check it out. Do that after the program, okay? And she's got more than 800,000 subscribers, and allegedly she's fled to Malaysia, but nobody's actually sure yet. Now, earlier last month, the police actually issued an arrest warrant, but she hasn't been found yet. And apparently immigration says she hasn't checked out of the country, so she may have fled across the borders without going through a checkpoint. So the article goes on a bit further saying how it actually worked, saying the YouTuber would invite investors to deposit money into her account with a promise of 25% returns for 3-month contract and 30% for 6-month contract. And for 12-month contracts, she was promising 35%. Now, basically, she was running it as what we'd call a Ponzi scheme. In other words, she'd used new investors' money to pay off the old investors, but of course at some stage it all comes crashing down, and it looks like a very pretty young lady has defrauded a lot of good Thai people out of their money, some 55 million US dollars. That's not bad. Why wasn't that picked up earlier? You'd really have to wonder. This is another version of the story from tweet247.net saying that she's reportedly left the country, and down the bottom of that page, popular Thai Facebook page Drama Addict claimed on Sunday that the YouTuber fled to Malaysia and that one of her victims offered a 1 million baht award to anyone that could provide information leading to her arrest. And just checking in with Channel News Asia and their version, their headline, Thai police hunt YouTuber Nutty in multi-million dollar Forex scam. And Thai police hunting the YouTuber. She's a dancer, apparently, and her name is Nutty Natamon, who's aged 29. Thank you very much for changing the advertisements there, Channel News Asia. A local media reported there could be up to 6,000 victims. So we just go through that story. Down there are some reports that she fled Thailand for Malaysia, but Watana said that according to immigration records, she remained in the kingdom, though her whereabouts were unknown. Her YouTube and Instagram accounts are filled with dance and music videos. In her last Instagram post from May 25th, she apologised to the victims and promised to pay the money back. Well, we look forward to you fulfilling your promise. We've got a funny feeling that's not going to happen, and it's going to be interesting to see if she ends up back in the kingdom to face justice. Now, speaking of that, we refer to another famous case that has an anniversary this Saturday, and we'll be doing a special report on that tomorrow. This is the Red Bull heir, who had a hit-and-run incident when he killed a policeman in his silver Ferrari back in September 2012. He currently is somewhere outside of the country, has not faced justice, and we'll be doing a special report on that in tomorrow's program. You're watching TNT. Thank you very much for joining the program as we whip around, covering a little bit of regional stories now. This one from the BBC. Taiwan has fired warning shots at 3 unidentified drones that flew near its outlying islands. The story goes on to say that it's not clear who was flying the drones, but all 3 were seen flying back towards the Chinese mainland. It comes as Taipei has, over the past weeks, complained of Chinese drones flying close to Taiwan-controlled islets near the Chinese coast. More about those in just a moment. Apparently, it's the first time actual warning shots have been fired at such drones, and the article further down saying it added that it fired warning flares before eventually firing a live round at a returning drone. So in the latest in this escalating drama with Taiwan, let's find out where these Kinmen County islands are. You might be surprised. Here we go. So there with the arrow pointing to them is the Kinmen Islets, which apparently are part of Taiwan. Very, very close to Xiamen in China. How close? Well, around about 10 kilometres at their closest point to one of the islands there off Xiamen with some of the main populations. So obviously a very fractured area, and apparently a very popular little drop-in spot for Chinese to visit on the weekends. They can get a special pass to go and visit that territory. So you can see with that proximity why it's been dragged into the current tensions between Taiwan and China. Okay, quick break from some of the serious news today, and we go to this one. This is from the Facebook page TIT Thailand. Have a good look at this. This is somewhere in Thailand. We've got those zigzag lines, and they've obviously paid a lot of money to go and paint those on the road in shades of white and yellow. Now, I can see a zebra crossing ahead. Is that a clue to what they are? I've never seen these before in all my days driving around Thailand's roads. Let's see if some of the commenters had an idea. Anupong had a thought, said the intention of the zigzag line is for warning that there are things that driver might have to stop ahead. No one in Thailand understands it because it's never been publicly introduced. Then Titang, this one sounds reasonable. Crosswalk ahead, slow down. It also makes the lane look narrower, which psychologically would make drivers slow their cars down. So that all looks a little bit different from above the drone shot to how it probably looks as we're driving along the road. This next one, I'm sorry, I don't even know where to start, but I played in good faith, and good luck if you can tell me what's going on here. We've got a pickup and we've got a motorbike. And they seem to be, closely aligned, and the pickup pushing along the motorbike. Let's have a quick look at that once again. There we are, the pickup obviously been damaged, and the motorbike without a rider on it, just making their way down a street quietly, black smoke pouring out the back of the pickup, and nobody really seemed to care much about the situation, although somebody, I'm very, very glad, had the presence of mind to turn their camera on and capture that and bring that to us this morning. I don't know what else to say. Let's go to our next story. This is Thai PBS World. And speaking of motorcycles and motorbikes, Bangkok gets tough with motorcyclists riding or parking on pavements. Now, this is a bit of a thing when the roads really clog up, particularly at peak hour. You'll see very often the motorcyclists just weaving their way through the traffic as they can, because they can fit in between the lanes of traffic. So just going to that story, and the BMA getting tough with motorcyclists riding and parking on the capital's pavements with fines of up to 5,000 baht. The second paragraph saying that the fine could start at 500 baht and go up to 500 baht soon. If the offenders are caught on CCTV, they'll receive a notification sent to their residence, and they'll have 15 days to pay it, followed by legal action if they fail to pay. The bottom paragraph, the BMA has installed about 60,000 surveillance cameras throughout the city to monitor traffic flow. 60,000 cameras. That's a hell of a lot of cameras. I suppose if you sort of start to add up all the different intersections, and they might have 3 or 4 cameras at each intersection, then along the roads, if there are 60,000 cameras, it would be unlikely to think of many places in Bangkok, certainly along any of the main roads, where you could ride without being on somebody's surveillance camera, let alone all the dash cams that are around these days. Big Brother. So that's a surprising story there, as the BMA cracking down on the motorcyclists, and they've said it before, and I imagine that this practice, like many others, will continue, but it's good to see them at least with the best intentions of cracking down on those motorcyclists jumping onto the sidewalks and the pavements to get a bit of a shortcut for their journey. To our next story now, and also from Thai PBS World, domestic political turmoil poses a challenge in hosting the APEC summit. That's the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, which is going to be held in November this year, and Bangkok hosting it again. So the story, a few key points here. Let's go to the first paragraph where it says, as Thailand waits anxiously for a court verdict that will determine the political future of General Prayut Chan-o-cha and whether he stays on as the country's Prime Minister, the clock is ticking towards another major event. So obviously Thailand would like to have everything in order when the people arrive. Prayut Chan-o-cha a couple of months ago was suggesting they might make a couple of public holidays for the days when the APEC meeting is on, meaning, of course, that a lot of people would head out of the city and it would make things a little bit quieter, which would be a good look, and, of course, easier for these participants in the APEC meeting to get around. So here are the key issues with this APEC meeting and why they're a little bit worried. If the court decides that Prayut Chan-o-cha has in fact had his full 8-year term, it means that the parliament has 2 options. The caretaker prime minister can either call a snap election or they can find another prime minister. And that prime minister would have to be found from the prime ministerial nominees from the leading political parties before the last election. Now, there are some names named in that story, but they include Anatun, for example, the head of the Bumjai Thai party, the past Prime Minister and currently the leader of the Democrats, Abbasit, and there's also a couple of leaders from the opposition parties, and it would be very difficult or a difficult situation for the Parliament if there was a Prime Minister from the opposition parties who was leading the Thai Parliament, even though it's only got quite a short term to go before an election has to be called before the 23rd of March next year. So a difficult situation, and I suppose you could describe that as some sort of political instability. The most stable situation would be the former Prime Minister, Prayut Chan-o-cha, being cleared, and some way the Constitutional Court saying, well, his 8 years hasn't been fulfilled. The start of his prime ministership started sometime later than when the coup happened, and he named himself Prime Minister in August 2014. Hope you're following this. Now, the problem is, if he is reinstalled as the Prime Minister of Thailand, the opposition parties and protesters are going to go berko. And this is going to revive memories of the last APEC meeting, which was held in Pattaya back in 2009, and they had to close the meeting down because of the protests. So that's what everybody's trying to avoid. Those images are going to be looming large in people's minds, and those memories do not want to be relived as Thailand heads towards hosting the next APEC meeting in November this year. Let's head to our next story today. And from the Straits Times, very serious story. Their headline saying serious human rights violations committed in China's Xinjiang. And this is according to a UN report. A story from Geneva. China committed serious human rights abuses against ethnic Muslims in the Xinjiang region under what it calls campaigns to stamp out terrorism and extremism. But in fact, it was largely targeted the Uyghurs and the largely Muslim population there. And allegations of patterns of torture or ill treatment, including forced medical treatment and adverse conditions of detention, are credible, as are the allegations of individual incidents of sexual and gender-based violence. Now, okay, I understand there's been a lot of attention to this violence in the Uyghur area in southern China, but I also note that back in 2019, the Burmese army were committing similar atrocities to the Rohingya people. And outside of this region, really outside of Burma and Thailand, there was very little coverage given to those atrocities. So again, the media focusing a lot on one lot of atrocities, but conveniently forgetting other atrocities. Although I understand that this is an important story and I'm glad it's being brought to the world's attention. It also makes headlines in the South China Morning Post. China may have committed crimes against humanity in Xinjiang, so that story will lead a lot of the media around the region today. To the Jakarta Post, and this is a bit of a follow-up to what we were talking about yesterday. Their headline, RCEP to benefit Indonesia's food transportation industries. Just noting that the RCEP is the big trade bloc that's now in force. I think it came into force in March, April this year, after many years of negotiations, which not only includes the ASEAN trading bloc, which is the 10 Southeast Asian countries, it also includes China, South Korea, Japan, Australia and New Zealand. So a very powerful trading bloc which takes in some 30% of the world's population and currently some 30 to 40% of the world's GDP. So a very big change to the trading environment around this region in the world. And also in the Jakarta Post, Indonesia proposes ASEAN Food Bank to deal with food insecurity. So that's great to see that ASEAN might be getting involved in doing something useful. Usually their major criticism being that they don't get their hands dirty and do anything terribly useful beyond holding a lot of meetings. And there are so many big issues in the region, and ASEAN is probably the best body to tackle them, but they don't. And with that, I say thank you very much, and thanks to 5-Star Marine, 5starmarinephuket.com, for sponsoring the program. If you'd like to head out to an island off Phuket, you need to contact 5-Star Marine and appreciate their support of the program. I appreciate your daily support as well, and we look forward to coming back with our next program tomorrow.